Good morning. Today we're going to continue our study of Hosea. Lots of outside reading today, but we'll start by reading Hosea 1 verses 3 through 11. So pause me and read that little bit. Okay, here we are introduced to Hosea's wife Gomer, and lots of questions surround Gomer. Was she a virgin? Would God have asked Hosea to marry someone who was a prostitute? That was against Israel's law. She was possibly a Baal prostitute, but probably, and again, every commentary I read, there's something different. But probably she was, she just worshipped the calves at Bethel. So this is kind of a metaphor. She wasn't really a prostitute yet, but she could have been. So the first child they have is Jezreel, and this is thought to definitely be Hosea's son and not someone else's. Jezreel was conceived after their marriage, and Jezreel means to scatter or disperse, and we know that soon after this Israel is dispersed, but there's meaning behind the name other than that. So this is where we need to start reading. Read the quick verse. This is Elijah's prophecy against King Ahab, and it's 1 Kings 21:21. So pause me real quick and go read that. And then you're going to read 2 Kings 10:1 through 11 and learn about the destruction of Ahab's sons. So that's 2 Kings 10:1 through 11. Again, pause me and read. So Jezreel was the summer home of Ahab and Jezebel. Jezebel did die there. So Jezreel does not have a good connotation to his name. He, pretty much is associated with bloodshed. There's lots of symbolism in all of these verses, but except for verse 4, the last part that says, I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. No symbolism, flat out, here it is, this is the way it is. But verse 5 says, we'll break Israel's bow. That is symbolic of breaking the military power of Israel. The Gomer gets pregnant again. We're not sure if that's Hosea's child, probably was. But this whole pregnancy thing, back in that time, it was thought that when a woman was pregnant, she was weak. Okay, so a woman was weak anyway, and then pregnant woman was like double or triple or quadruple weak. So there's a weakness, and the child she has then is a daughter, weak. And she's told to name this daughter Rumaha, Lo Rumaha. And that means has not obtained mercy or not loved or unpitied. The self-esteem of a child, why don't you just say, let's name our kid not loved. But again, her mother is a whore, so how much self-esteem can she have? Through this whole thing, God is giving them being Israel, a chance. And there's the story of Alexander the Great. Excuse me. So when he besieged a city, he had this great lantern kept lighted day and night. And this was a signal to the city that he had besieged, that as long as the light burned, they had time to save themselves by surrender. But once the light was out, that's it. and he was consistent with destroying a city after the light went out. So in verse 7, God continues to love Judah, and he will save Judah. Now, we're talking Judah, not Israel, even though God still loves Israel. This is talking about Judah, the southern kingdom. God continues to love Judah, and he will save them, but not by military action. So this is another reading, and it's pretty interesting stuff. 2 Kings 18 and 19. In particular, 2 Kings 19, verse 35. But just skim over the other part. Go ahead and pause me at 2 Kings 18 and 19. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. God saved them without military action. And then Gomer gets pregnant again, weak, and has a son, this time, Lo-Ani. And that's called not my people, is what that means. So again, this may or may not have been Hosea's child. Gomer had weaned Lo-Ruhamah. So Lo-Ruhamah was probably 2 to 3 years old when they weaned. So there's probably 2 to 3 years difference there, which is a period of, again, weakness. And then this male son comes along. While the male son comes along, the female child is without nourishment. She's 2 to 3 years old. She can probably feed herself by this time. And the son indicates this last masculine stage of Israel. So what we have here is Israel is portrayed in a pregnant Gomer, weak Israel. Jezreel, military is broken. Military is, and they are scattered. A pregnant Gomer, weak. Lo-Ruhamah, an unlearned daughter, unable to defend herself. Israel has had to go to enemies to get support, and without nourishment. A pregnant Gomer, again, weak. And then Lo-Ami, not God's people. This last masculine stage is the 3-year siege of of Samaria. And this is where, Israel says, we can do this. We can withstand this siege. Well, they couldn't. But it's a very masculine kind of standing up for themselves thing. Masculine. I think a woman would have done it too, but whatever. Verse 10, the Israelites will be like sand on the seashore. So the Israelites, we know, go out, they are dispersed, they intermarry. We probably all have a little Jewish blood in us. But more importantly, in Romans 11, Paul talks about us being grafted into the nation of Israel. All Christians are grafted into the nation. So we are Israelites just by being Christians. So after the return of Judah from Babylon, there's no northern or southern kingdom. There's just Israel again. And so any of the dispersed people that come back, they're not Judeans, they're not Israelites, they're just the Jewish nation of Israel. Verse 11, this head, thought this was interesting. They will appoint a leader. It could have been Zerubbabel, who actually brought them back to Jerusalem from Babylon. But more likely, this was a prophecy of Jesus, who would be the head and who the people would, in their hearts, decide would be their head. And Jezreel, coming out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Jezreel also means scattering, but it also means sowing. So like you're scattering seeds to grow again. So God was sown as they're scattered in different lands. Different people were, just like us, able to learn about God and not be confined to the Israeli nation. We'll pick up there next time.